I found my son sleeping in a frozen car at O'Hare Airport with my 5-year-old grandsons huddled under a thin blanket. When I asked him where the $325,000 I gave him for his business went, he looked at me with dead eyes and said, "Tiffany took it all. Dad, she says I am insane." That was the moment I stopped being a retired father and went back to being the man who built half of Chicago. I told him to pack his things because we were going to war. My name is Harrison Caldwell. I am 70 years old and I thought I had seen everything. But nothing prepares you for seeing your own flesh and blood broken by the person he promised to love forever. Before I tell you how I dismantled my daughter-in-law's life piece by piece, please hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. It helps me know I am not shouting into the void. It was 11 at night, and the wind at O'Hare International Airport cut through my wool coat like a knife. The thermometer on the terminal wall read 17 degrees F, which is about C. I had just landed from a 2-week trip to Dubai where I was consulting on a skyscraper project. I was tired. I was jet-lagged. I just wanted to get my truck and drive home to my warm estate in Lake Forest. I took the shuttle bus to Economy Lot G, the cheapest long-term parking available. I usually park in the garage, but the construction on the main terminal had forced everyone out to the remote lots. As I walked down aisle 14, searching for my black Ram 1500 Limited, I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. Tucked away in a dark corner, half hidden behind a concrete pillar, was a silver 2020 Ford Explorer. I knew that car. I bought that car. It was the wedding gift I gave to my son Daniel and his wife Tiffany 5 years ago, but it shouldn't have been here. Daniel lived in a 4-bedroom house in Neepville. He had a heated garage. Why was his car sitting in the cheapest lot at the airport covered in 3 in of gray slush? I walked closer, my boots crunching on the frozen asphalt. The windows were fogged up from the inside. Someone had taped pages of the Chicago Tribune over the rear windows to block out the harsh orange light of the parking lot lamps. I wiped a circle of frost off the driver's side window and peered inside. My heart stopped. My son, Daniel, a 32-year-old software engineer who graduated top of his class, was slumped over the steering wheel. He was wearing 3 hoodies and a beanie cap. He was asleep, but his breathing was shallow. I looked into the back seat and felt a physical blow to my chest. My twin grandsons, Leo and Max, were curled up together like puppies under a dirty fleece blanket. They were awake. Leo was holding a sleeve of stale Ritz crackers and handing one to his brother. Their little noses were red from the cold. I didn't think. I reacted. I pounded my fist on the glass. Daniel opened this door. Daniel jerked awake. His eyes were wide with terror. He scrambled backward, putting his hands up as if he expected to be hit. He didn't see his father. He saw a threat. He rolled down the window just to crack his voice trembling. "Please, officer, we are leaving. We just needed to rest for an hour. Please don't tow us." "It wasn't a police officer, Daniel. It's me. Open the damn door." He squinted his eyes, adjusting to the darkness. "Dad." I ripped the door open. The smell hit me instantly. Stale air, unwashed bodies, and fear. The car was freezing. The engine was off to save gas. My son, the man I raised to be strong and independent, looked at me and crumbled. He didn't just cry, he shattered. He buried his face in his hands and sobbed with a sound that I will never forget as long as I live. I leaned in and unlocked the back doors. Leo and Max yelled, "Grandpa," and tried to scramble out of their car seats. I saw their breath in the air. It was dangerously cold. "Get out," I ordered Daniel. "Get the boys, we are leaving." "We can't, Dad," Daniel stammered, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "She will find us. She said if I leave the city she will call the cops. She has a tracker on my phone." "Who?" "Tiffany, yes. She took the house keys. She changed the codes. She told the police I was dangerous." I grabbed Daniel by the collar of his hoodie, not in anger, but to make him look at me. "Listen to me very carefully. Where is the money? Where is the $325,000 I wired to your account last month for your startup TechFlow? Daniel let out a dry, hysterical laugh. Gone. It's all gone. There is no TechFlow, Dad. I tried to access the account on Monday to pay the office lease. The balance was zero. When I asked Tiffany, she laughed. She said I must have gambled it away. She showed me bank statements I had never seen before. Fake statements. Then her parents showed up, Jerry and Linda. They threw my clothes on the lawn. They said I was mentally unstable and a danger to the kids. And you believed them? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. They had paperwork, Dad. They had a doctor's note signed by someone I don't know claiming I have acute bipolar disorder. They threatened to have me committed if I didn't leave. I managed to grab the boys when she was in the shower and we ran. We have been living in this parking lot for 3 days because I didn't know where else to go where she wouldn't look. I looked at my son. He was a shell of a man, broken by the woman he adored, betrayed by the family he tried to support, but he was alive, and my grandsons were alive. Grab the car seats, I said, leave the rest. But the car, Daniel protested. Leave it. It's a tomb. You are coming with me. I marched them 3 rows over to my truck. I started the engine and cranked the heater to the maximum. The heated leather seats began to warm up. I watched Leo and Max hold their hands up to the vents, sighing with relief. I pulled a protein bar from my glove box and gave it to them. They ate it like they hadn't seen food in days. Daniel sat in the passenger seat, shivering violently as the adrenaline wore off. He looked at me, shame written all over his face. I am sorry, Dad, I failed. I lost the money. I lost my home. I am a failure. I put the truck into gear and drove toward the exit gate. I didn't look at him. I looked straight ahead at the icy road. You are not a failure, Daniel. You are a victim of a sophisticated theft. But crying time is over. Wipe your face. We are going to my house, and tomorrow morning we are not going to hide. We are going to hunt. As we merged onto the I-190 highway toward the city, my phone buzzed. It was a text message notification from my home security system. Motion detected at the front gate. I checked the camera feed on my dashboard screen. It wasn't a delivery driver. It was a squad car from the Lake Forest Police Department. And standing next to it, wrapped in a white faux fur coat and looking like a grieving angel, was Tiffany. She found us, Daniel whispered, his face draining of color. She knows. Good, I said, pressing my foot down on the accelerator. Let her come. She thinks she is playing checkers with a soft-hearted husband. She is about to find out she is playing chess with a man who clawed his way up from the construction pits of Chicago. And I never lose. We had been inside my Lake Forest estate for less than 45 minutes. My housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, had performed a miracle with a can of chicken noodle soup and some grilled cheese sandwiches. For the first time in 3 days, I saw a little bit of color return to Leo and Max's cheeks. They were sitting at the granite island in my kitchen, their small legs dangling off the high stools, eating as if it were their last meal. Daniel was sitting next to them, staring into a mug of hot coffee, his hands still trembling slightly from the cold of the parking lot. The warmth of the house, the smell of food, the silence of the snow falling outside, it all felt like a sanctuary. I thought we had time. I thought we had at least a night to breathe, to plan, to figure out how to get my son back on his feet. I was wrong. The peace shattered instantly. It started with a low hum in the distance, then grew rapidly into a wail that pierced through the heavy oak doors of my home. Sirens, not one but several. Blue and red lights began to flash against the kitchen windows, painting the snowy lawn in chaotic bursts of color. Daniel dropped his coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, splashing hot liquid onto his boots, but he didn't even flinch. He just looked at me with eyes full of absolute terror and whispered, "She found us." She tracked the phone. Before I could even tell him to stay calm, the front doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite ring. It was a demand. Then came the heavy pounding of fists against the wood. Open up. This is the Lake Forest Police Department. I walked to the foyer, my boots clicking on the marble. I opened the door to find 3 squad cars blocking my driveway. 3 officers stood on my porch, hands resting near their holsters. And behind them, stepping out of the back of a police cruiser like a tragic heroine in a movie, was Tiffany. She wasn't wearing the clothes of a worried mother who had been searching for her children. She was wearing a pristine beige trench coat that I knew cost more than $2,000 and a cashmere scarf wrapped perfectly around her neck. Her face was a mask of tear-streaked devastation. She ran past the officers toward me, wailing, "Where are they? Where are my babies? Please tell me he didn't hurt them." Officer Miller, a man I had donated to for the policeman's ball for 10 years, stepped forward. He looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Caldwell, I am sorry for the disturbance. We received a frantic 911 call regarding an active kidnapping. Mrs. Caldwell alleges that your son, Daniel Caldwell, abducted their 2 children and has made threats of violence. We have an emergency custody order signed by a judge less than an hour ago." I looked at the paper he shoved toward me. It was a protective order granting Tiffany full temporary custody based on immediate danger. It claimed Daniel was suffering from acute bipolar episodes and was a flight risk. "This is ridiculous," I said, keeping my voice level. "My son is in the kitchen feeding his children soup. He is not a kidnapper. He is a father protecting his kids from homelessness." Tiffany pushed past the officer, rushing into the house. "Lo, Max, Mommy is here." I turned to see Daniel standing in the hallway entrance, shielding the boys behind his legs. When Leo and Max saw their mother, they didn't run to her. They froze. They looked at Daniel, then at her, confused and frightened by the noise and the uniformed men crowding into their grandfather's hallway. "He has them," Tiffany screamed, pointing a manicured finger at Daniel. "Grab him. He said he would drive the car off a bridge. He is unstable." 2 officers moved past me. Daniel stepped back, raising his hands. "No, please. I didn't say that, I just took them to get food. She locked me out." "Sir, step away from the children," one officer commanded, his hand on his taser. Daniel looked at me, panic rising in his chest. "Dad, tell them. Tell them she is lying." I stepped between the officers and my son. "Gentlemen, stand down. This is my house. My son is unarmed. He is exhausted. He is not a criminal, Mr. Caldwell," Officer Miller said firmly, putting a hand on my arm. "Do not interfere. We have a court order. If you obstruct this, we will have to arrest you too. And that won't help your grandkids." I knew he was right. If I got arrested tonight, Daniel would have no one. I had to swallow my rage. I had to step aside. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. I watched as they grabbed Daniel. They spun him around and pushed him against the wall. They handcuffed him in front of his sons. Leo started to scream. "No, Daddy. Leave Daddy alone." Max started to cry, a high-pitched sound that tore through my heart. Tiffany swooped in. Then she dropped to her knees, hugging the boys, but her eyes weren't on them. Her eyes were scanning the room, checking the furniture, looking at me. She was performing. "It's okay, babies. Mommy is here. The bad man can't hurt you anymore. We are going home." Daniel was struggling, tears streaming down his face. "Tiffany, tell them. Tell them I just wanted to feed them. Why are you doing this?" She ignored him completely. She stood up, holding a hand of each twin, and began to walk them toward the door. The boys were dragging their feet, looking back at their father, who was being marched out by the officers. As the police led Daniel to the squad car, Tiffany paused near me. The chaotic noise of the scene seemed to fade for a second. She leaned in close, bringing her face next to mine as if to give me a hug of gratitude. To the officers watching, it looked like a daughter-in-law seeking comfort from a grandfather. But her voice was a whisper of cold, sharp steel. "Dad, I am so sorry you had to see him like this," she hissed into my ear. "I tried to protect you from the truth. Daniel has a problem, a serious gambling problem." I pulled back slightly to look at her, but she held my arm tight. "He didn't invest that money in a startup," she whispered, her eyes wide with fake concern. "He lost it all. Online poker, sports betting. He lost the $325,000 in 2 weeks. He is sick, Dad. He is paranoid. He thinks I am stealing from him because he can't accept what he did. She reached into her oversized designer bag and pulled out a folded stack of papers. She shoved them into my hand. Here, these are the bank statements. I found them hidden in the garage. Look at the transfers. DraftKings, Poker Stars, it is all there. I had to lock him out. I had to protect the boy's college fund before he stole that too. Don't believe the words of an addict, Dad. He needs help, serious help. She pulled away, wiping a fresh tear from her cheek, and looked at me with a pleading expression that would have won an Academy Award. Please don't bail him out yet. The doctors say he needs to hit rock bottom before he can heal. Let them take him to the psychiatric ward. It is for his own good. She turned and walked out into the snow, pulling my sobbing grandsons toward her luxury SUV. I stood in the open doorway, the cold wind biting at my face. I looked down at the papers in my hand. They were crumpled bank statements. I saw the numbers. I saw the names of gambling sites. It looked real. It looked damning. For a split second, doubt crept into my mind. Could Daniel have lied? Could my quiet, brilliant son have a secret demon I didn't know about? Then I looked up. I saw Tiffany buckling the boys into the back seat of a brand new Range Rover Sport. I saw the way the light caught the diamonds on her wrist. I saw the way she didn't look back at her husband, who was being shoved into the back of a police car like a stray dog. A nurse's salary does not buy a Range Rover. A nurse's salary does not buy a Cartier watch. And a man who just lost $300,000 gambling does not drive his children to a freezing parking lot to starve with them. He goes to a hotel. He goes to a friend. He doesn't hide in the dark unless he is terrified of something much worse than debt. I watched the convoy of red and blue lights disappear down my long driveway, taking my entire world with them. I closed the heavy front door and locked it. The house was silent again, but the warmth was gone. I looked at the papers in my hand one more time. Fake, I said aloud to the empty room. I walked to my office and sat behind my heavy mahogany desk. I didn't call the police station. Not yet. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in 5 years. Rachel Sterling, the toughest, meanest, most expensive divorce and criminal defense attorney in Chicago. It was midnight, but she answered on the second ring. "Harrison," she said, her voice smoky and alert. "This better be good or someone better be dead." "They took him, Rachel," I said, my voice steady but cold as ice. "They took Daniel to the psych ward on a 5150 hold, and she took the kids." I heard the rustle of sheets and the click of a lamp turning on. "Who is she, Harrison?" "The woman who thinks she just won the lottery," I replied. "I need you at Cook County Hospital in 20 minutes. Bring a forensic accountant and bring a private doctor. We are not just getting him out. We are going to burn her kingdom down." I hung up the phone and looked at the family portrait on my desk. Daniel, 10 years old, smiling with a baseball cap. I made a promise to that boy. I promised I would always protect him. I failed him this week. I let him sleep in the cold. But the cold was over. I opened my safe and took out a stack of cash and my black ledger. Tiffany Prescott wanted to play games with mental health and bank statements. She had no idea she had just invited a shark into her kiddie pool. I turned off the lights in the office. It was time to go to work. I stood on the frozen porch of my Lake Forest estate, watching the red tail lights of the police cruiser fade into the winter darkness. My son was in the back of that car, handcuffed, broken, and labeled a danger to himself and others. A 5150 hold. That is the legal code for an involuntary psychiatric commitment. It means for the next 72 hours, Daniel has no rights. He has no voice. He is just a number in the system of Cook County. But it wasn't the police car that held my attention. It was the white Range Rover Sport idling at the end of my driveway. The exhaust plume rose thick and white in the cold air. Tiffany was adjusting the rear view mirror, checking her makeup. I saw the interior light flicker on for a second. In that brief moment of illumination, I saw something that made the bile rise in my throat. She raised her hand to smooth her hair, and the street lamp caught the distinct glint of gold and diamonds on her wrist. It was a Cartier Tank Francis. I know watches. I know. I have bought enough of them for clients and partners over the years. That watch retails for at least $8,000. Then there was the car itself, a 2024 Range Rover Sport in Fuji White. That is a $110,000 vehicle. I did the math in my head as the cold wind whipped against my face. A nurse in Chicago makes perhaps $80,000 a year. Daniel had been unemployed for 6 months, pouring every cent into his startup. They were supposedly broke. They were supposedly drowning in debt. Yet as she pulled away, the tires crunching confidently on the snow, she looked like a woman who had just won the lottery. $325,000 missing. A brand new luxury SUV, a diamond watch, and a husband conveniently locked away in a psychiatric ward where no one would believe a word he said. The equation was simple. It was brutal. It was a conspiracy. I turned and walked back into my house. The silence was deafening. The half-eaten grilled cheese sandwiches were still on the counter. Leo's small winter boots were kicked off by the door. The ghost of my family was everywhere. I didn't sit down to grieve. I went straight to my study. The heavy oak door shut with a solid thud, sealing me in with my anger. I sat at my desk and picked up the secure landline. I didn't tremble. My hands were steady. This was business now. I dialed Rachel Sterling. It was nearly 1:00 in the morning. Most lawyers would have their phones off. Rachel was not most lawyers. She answered on the first ring, her voice crisp and devoid of sleep. "Harrison," she said, "I am assuming you are not calling to ask about my health." "They took him, Rachel," I said, my voice low. "Tiffany orchestrated a 5150. She claimed he was suicidal and violent. She had a signed affidavit from a doctor I have never heard of. She took the boys." There was a pause on the line, the sound of a pen scratching on paper. "Where did they take him?" "Cook County General Psychiatric Wing." "I will meet you there in 45 minutes, Rachel said. "No," I interrupted. "Listen to me. I saw her car. I saw her watch. This isn't just a custody dispute. This is grand larceny and fraud. She stole the seed money I gave Daniel. She is spending it right now. I need you to bring everything. I want a forensic accountant on standby for the morning. But right now, tonight, I need a private doctor, someone with credentials that can override a county psych evaluation. I need to prove my son is not insane. I need to prove he is being poisoned or gaslit." "I have just the man," Rachel replied, her tone sharpening. "Dr. Eris. He is the former head of psychiatry at Mount C. He owes me a favor. We will meet you at the intake desk." "Harrison, bring your checkbook. This is not going to be cheap." "I don't care about the cost," I said. "Just get him out." I hung up and walked to the wall safe behind my painting of the Chicago skyline. I spun the dial. Left, right, left. The heavy steel door swung open. I took out a thick envelope of cash in my black ledger. I also took my personal firearm, a Sig Sauer, checked the safety, and then put it back. No, I couldn't bring a weapon into a hospital. I had to fight this war with different ammunition. I grabbed my coat and headed for the garage. I bypassed the sedan and took the truck again. It felt more like a tank. The drive to Cook County Hospital was a blur of gray highway and yellow street lights. My mind was racing, connecting the dots. Daniel had said he felt groggy. He said he couldn't remember transactions. He said Tiffany found bank statements he had never seen. It was a classic setup. Make the victim look unstable. Isolate him. Strip him of his credibility. Then when he tries to speak the truth, it sounds like the ravings of a madman. I arrived at the hospital at 2:15 in the morning. The emergency room entrance was a chaotic scene of ambulances, police cars, and the desperate energy of the city's night shift. I parked the truck and walked in. The air smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. Rachel Sterling was already there. She was standing near the security desk, a striking figure in a sharp black trench coat and high heels that clicked ominously on the linoleum floor. She looked like a shark swimming in a tank of goldfish. Standing next to her was an older man with silver hair and a weary but intelligent face. That had to be Dr. Aris. Harrison, Rachel said, nodding to me. She didn't offer a hug. She knew I didn't want one. This is Dr. Aris. We have been blocked at the first checkpoint. The attending nurse says Daniel is under heavy sedation and cannot have visitors for 24 hours. Heavy sedation, I repeated. Of course, they want to keep him quiet. Dr. Aris stepped forward. Mr. Caldwell, if they have administered antipsychotics to a patient who is merely exhausted or under duress, it could cause significant cognitive damage. We need to intervene immediately. I walked up to the reception desk. A young man behind bulletproof glass looked up bored. Name: Harrison Caldwell. I am here for my son, Daniel Caldwell. He was brought in 2 hours ago by police. The man tapped on his keyboard. Caldwell, acute hold. No visitors, doctor's orders, come back tomorrow. I leaned close to the glass. I didn't raise my voice. I lowered it. Listen to me, son. The woman standing behind me is Rachel Sterling. If you don't know who she is, Google her. She sues hospitals for breakfast. The man standing next to her is the former chief of psychiatry for this state. We have reason to believe my son has been falsely committed and is being chemically restrained against his will. You have 2 choices. You can call the administrator on duty and let us up, or you can be named personally in the lawsuit we file at 9:00 a.m. The young man blinked. He looked at Rachel, who offered him a cold, predatory smile. He picked up the phone. 10 minutes later, we were in the freight elevator, moving up to the 5th floor, the psychiatric wing. The doors opened and the atmosphere changed. It was quiet here, oppressive. We were met by a shift supervisor who looked nervous. He is in room 504, she said, but please keep it down. He is very agitated. We walked down the long, sterile hallway. Room 504 was at the end. The door was heavy metal with a small, reinforced window. I looked inside. Daniel was strapped to a bed. His wrists and ankles were bound with leather restraints. He was thrashing against them, his head rolling from side to side on the thin pillow. His eyes were open but unfocused. He was mumbling something over and over. I pressed my ear to the door. Not crazy, he whispered, his voice. Not crazy. She took the money, she took the money. I felt a rage so hot it almost blinded me. My son, the boy who built his first computer at age 10, the man who never raised his voice, strapped down like an animal. Dr. Aris unlocked the door with the key card the nurse had reluctantly given him. We entered the room. Daniel flinched as the light from the hallway hit his face. Daniel, I said softly, it's Dad. I'm here. He looked at me, struggling to focus. Dad, is she here? Don't let her in. She has a needle. She puts it in the coffee. I looked at Dr. Aris. Did you hear that? Dr. Aris was already at the bedside, checking Daniel's pupils with a pen light. Dilated, rapid pulse. He lifted Daniel's arm. There was a fresh puncture mark, but there were also older bruises, faint yellow and green marks near the crook of his elbow. This isn't just from tonight, Dr. Aris said, his voice grim. He has been sedated before. Recently, repeatedly. Rachel pulled out a notepad. We need a toxicology screen right now. Independent lab, not the hospital lab. We need to preserve the chain of custody. I grabbed Daniel's hand. It was cold and clammy. Daniel, listen to me. We are getting you out, but I need you to hold on. I need you to stay awake. He squeezed my hand weakly. The money, Dad, the $300,000, it's not lost. It's in Florida. I saw the transfer code before she locked me out. Prescott Ventures. Prescott Ventures. Prescott was Tiffany's maiden name, her parents, Jerry and Linda. I looked at Rachel. We have a trail. Rachel nodded, already typing on her phone. I will have my investigator run it. If that money crossed state lines, this is federal wire fraud. I turned back to my son. I smoothed the hair back from his sweating forehead. You rest now, Daniel. Don't fight the straps. Let Dr. Aris do his work. I am going to find your money. I am going to find your children. And the people who put you in this bed are going to wish they had never heard the name Caldwell. I walked out of the room into the hallway. I needed air. I felt suffocated by the injustice of it. I walked to the window at the end of the hall and looked out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there in a warm bed, Tiffany was probably sleeping soundly, thinking she had won. She thought the 72-hour hold bought her time. She thought it gave her a head start. She was wrong. It didn't buy her time. It bought her a war. I took out my phone and dialed the number for Gus, my private investigator. It was 3:00 a.m. Gus, I said when he answered. Wake up. I have a job for you. I need you to find a company called Prescott Ventures in Florida, and I need you to find out everything about Jerry and Linda Prescott. I want to know what they eat, where they sleep, and exactly how much debt they are in. And Gus, start looking for a white Range Rover Sport. I want to know where it parks at night. I hung up the phone. The sun was starting to crack the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gray. Day one of the 72 hours had just begun, and I had a lot of work to do. The morning sun hit the gray linoleum of the hospital hallway, but it brought no warmth. It was 9:00 a.m., and we were standing in the office of the hospital administrator, a man named Dr. Vance, who seemed to shrink physically under the predatory gaze of Rachel Sterling. She didn't shout. She didn't pound the desk. She simply placed a thick file on his bladder and leaned forward. "Doctor," she said, her voice smooth as silk and just as dangerous. "You have two options right now. Option 1 is to continue holding Daniel Caldwell based on a falsified affidavit from a doctor who has been reprimanded 3 times by the medical board. If you choose this, I will have a writ of habeas corpus filed by noon, and by 1 p.m. I will be suing this hospital and you personally for unlawful imprisonment and medical malpractice." She paused to let the threat sink in. Dr. Vance wiped sweat from his upper lip. "Option 2, she continued, is that you allow Mr. Caldwell's private physician, Dr. Aris, to examine the patient immediately. If Dr. I believe you." Dr. Aris moved efficiently. He pulled the privacy curtain and opened his medical bag. He didn't just check Daniel's heart rate or blood pressure. He took out a pair of surgical scissors and a small plastic vial. "Daniel," Dr. Aris said calmly, "I need a sample of your hair from the root, and I need to draw 2 vials of blood." "Why?" Daniel asked, confusion clouding his face. "Because we need to know what is in your system," I answered for the doctor. "Daniel, think back the last few weeks. How did you feel in the evenings?" Daniel rubbed his temples. "Tired, so tired. It was weird. I would come home from the office while the basement where I was working, and Tiffany would be so sweet. She would make me coffee. She bought this fancy hazelnut creamer. She insisted I drink it. She said I looked stressed. Coffee," I repeated. "And then what happened?" He frowned, trying to push through the fog in his brain. "I would drink it. It tasted sharp, bitter under the sugar. Half an hour later, the room would start spinning. My legs would feel like lead. I would pass out on the couch. And in the morning, she would show me videos on her phone, videos of me yelling, videos of me throwing things. But I didn't remember doing any of it. She told me I was having manic episodes. She said I was dangerous." Dr. Aris exchanged a dark look with me. "That is not mania, Daniel," the doctor said quietly as he tied a tourniquet around my son's arm. "That is a classic reaction to a high dose of sedatives or dissociative drugs. You weren't having episodes. You were being drugged." Daniel stared at the needle entering his vein. "Drugged by Tiffany." "We are going to find out," I said. "Doctor." Iris filled 2 vials with dark red blood. Then he snipped a lock of hair from the back of Daniel's head and sealed it in an evidence bag. "These samples are going to a private lab in downtown Chicago, not the hospital lab. We maintain the chain of custody. If there is poison in your veins, we will find it." Once the samples were secured, Dr. Aris conducted a rapid cognitive assessment. He asked Daniel the date the president to count backward from 100 by sevens. Daniel answered everything perfectly, though slowly. "He is lucid," Dr. Aris declared. turning to the nurse who had been watching from the doorway with a scowl. He is physically exhausted and shows signs of chemical suppression, but he is not psychotic. He is not suicidal. There is no medical or legal grounds to hold him. Rachel stepped forward, holding a clipboard she had materialized from somewhere. Sign here, nurse. You are releasing him against medical advice according to your charts, but in accordance with independent expert evaluation. If you refuse, I will call the judge right now. The nurse glared at her but signed the paper. Get him out of here, she snapped. But if he hurts someone, it is on you. He won't hurt anyone, I said, handing Daniel a bag of fresh clothes I had brought from home. The only person who is going to get hurt is the one who put him in here. Daniel changed quickly. Jeans, a sweater, boots. He looked like a human being again, though a broken one. We walked out of the psych ward 24 hours after he was admitted, bypassing the 72-hour hold entirely. The power of expensive lawyers and the truth is a formidable combination. As we reached the lobby, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Gus, the investigator. I stopped to read it. Found the money trail. It didn't go to any gambling site. It went to a shell company in Delaware called Prescott Ventures. And Harrison, you are going to want to sit down for the rest. I didn't sit down. I put the phone in my pocket. We walked out into the biting Chicago winter air. The wind hit us, but this time it felt like freedom. Where are we going? Daniel asked as he climbed into my truck. Home? No, I said, locking the doors. Tiffany knows where I live. She has the police on speed dial. She will claim you escaped. She will try to drag you back. We are going to the safe house. I drove us into the city, merging onto the Kennedy Expressway. We headed downtown toward the towering skyline. I own a building in the Loop, a converted warehouse on Franklin Street. The penthouse is my private retreat. It has a separate elevator, biometric security, and steel-reinforced doors. No one knows about it except my lawyer and my accountant. Not even Tiffany knew it existed. We parked in the underground garage. I led Daniel up to the penthouse. The space was wide, modern, and filled with light from the floor to ceiling windows. I poured him a glass of water and handed him a sandwich I had picked up on the way. You stay here, I told him. Do not turn on your phone. Do not log into your email. Do not contact anyone. To the world, you are still in the psych ward or missing. Let Tiffany think she won this round. Let her get comfortable. Daniel sat on the leather sofa looking out at the city covered in snow. Dad, he whispered. The boys, Leo and Max, she has them. I know, I said, my voice hardening, and we are going to get them back. But we can't do it if you are in a hospital bed or a jail cell. You need to sleep. You need to get that poison out of your system. Dr. W. Aris will come by tomorrow to check on you. I walked to the door. Where are you going? Daniel asked. I am going to meet a man about a dog, I said cryptically. Actually, I was going to meet Gus because if the money went to Prescott Ventures, that meant Tiffany wasn't working alone. Prescott was her maiden name. Her parents, Jerry and Linda, the ones who threw Daniel's clothes on the lawn, were in on it. This wasn't just a bad marriage. This was a family business, and I was about to bankrupt them. Gus operates out of a nondescript brick building in the South Loop of Chicago, the kind of place you drive past 1,000 times without noticing. There is no sign on the door, just a buzzer with a faded number. I arrived at 4 in the morning, my eyes burning from exhaustion, but my mind was wide awake. The smell of stale coffee and ozone hit me as I walked into his office. It was a room filled with servers humming quietly in the dark and wall-to-wall monitors glowing with streams of data. Gus was sitting behind a desk buried under stacks of paper, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. He didn't offer me a drink. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just swiveled his chair around and pointed to the largest screen on the wall. Sit down, Harrison. Gus said, his voice growly and serious. You are not going to like this. But you paid for the truth, so here it is. I sat on a folding metal chair, leaning forward. My hands clasped tightly together sunk to stop them from shaking. Show me, I said. Gus typed a command, and a map of the United States appeared on the screen. A red line traced a digital path from Chicago to the East Coast. "Let's start with TechFlow," Gus began. "The revolutionary software startup your son invested $325,000 in. According to the paperwork Daniel signed, it is a limited liability company registered in Delaware. That is standard for tech companies. Tax benefits, privacy, it all looks legitimate on paper." He zoomed in on the map, focusing on a street address in Wilmington, Delaware. "But when I ran a physical verification of the registered address, I didn't find a server farm. I didn't find a software lab. I found this." He pulled up a Google Street View image. It was a rundown strip mall. The address corresponded to a business called Suds and Duds, a coin-operated laundromat next to a liquor store. I stared at the image. A laundromat. My son's future. My hard-earned money was invested in a place that smelled of bleach and cheap detergent. "TechFlow is a shell," Gus said flatly. "It has no employees, no product, no intellectual property. It was incorporated 3 weeks before you wired the money. And the registered agent is a lawyer in Miami who specializes in setting up ghost companies for people who don't want to be found." "So it was a scam from day one," I said, feeling a cold knot of rage tighten in my stomach. "It gets worse," Gus said. He tapped another key. The red line on the map shot down the coast all the way to Florida. "I tracked the wire transfer you sent to Daniel's account. He moved it to the TechFlow account on Monday, thinking he was funding operations. The money sat in the TechFlow account for exactly 12 minutes. Then it was wire transferred out in a single lump sum to where I asked to a corporate account in Miami held by an entity called Prescott Holdings LLC. Gus replied. "Prescott," I whispered. "Tiffany's maiden name." "Exactly," Gus said. "Now Prescott Holdings sounds impressive, but it is just a holding company for a single asset. A failing construction firm owned by one Gerald Jerry Prescott. Jerry, my father-in-law, the man who sat at my Thanksgiving table and ate my turkey. The man who threw my son's clothes on the lawn and called him mentally unstable." Gus pulled up a spreadsheet. It was a bank ledger. He had hacked into their transaction history. I didn't ask how he did it. I didn't care. "Here is where your money went, Harrison. It didn't vanish into the ether. It went on a shopping spree. Look at the line items." I leaned in closer, my eyes scanning the rows of numbers. The dates were from this week. The ink on these transactions was barely dry. The first item was for $85,000. The recipient was the Seal Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. Jerry paid off a marker, Gus explained. I dug into his credit report. The man is a degenerate gambler. He was underwater. He was facing foreclosure on his house and he had bookies breathing down his neck. Your money saved his kneecaps. I felt a wave of nausea. Tiffany had looked me in the eye and told me Daniel had a gambling problem. She had printed out fake statements to frame my son for the very vice her own father was drowning in. It was a projection of the highest order. A lie so bold it was almost impressive. "Keep reading," Gus said. The next item was a wire transfer for $112,000 to Land Rover Gold Coast in downtown Chicago. I closed my eyes. The white Range Rover Sport. The car I saw her driving tonight. The car she put my grandsons in. She bought it with my money. She stole from her husband. Devastated his life and then treated herself to a luxury SUV to drive away from the wreckage. "And the rest?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Gus highlighted a series of transactions. $45,000 to Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. A booking for the owner's suite on the Icon of the Seas for next month. 5 passengers, Jerry, Linda, Tiffany, Leo, and Max. "They are going on vacation," I said, the realization hitting me like a hammer. "They destroyed my son, had him committed to a psych ward, stole his inheritance, and now they are planning to take my grandsons on a tropical cruise to celebrate." "There is more," Gus said, scrolling down. "Tuition payments, $5,000 to Bright Horizons Academy, spa treatments at the Peninsula Hotel, designer clothing boutiques on Michigan Avenue. Harrison, they are eating your money. They are living like kings on the corpse of your son's dignity. I stood up and walked to the window. The city lights of Chicago blurred before my eyes. I wasn't sad anymore. Sadness is a weak emotion. I was furious. I was filled with a cold, hard resolve that I hadn't felt since my early days in construction when union bosses tried to shake me down. They think I am just a checkbook, I said to the glass. They think Daniel is weak and I am old. They think they got away with it. They made a mistake, Gus said from behind me. A big one. What mistake? Gus typed on his keyboard again. When they set up Prescott Holdings, Jerry got sloppy. He listed himself and his wife Linda as the primary officers, which is standard, but he added a third silent partner to the LLC operating agreement. 3 days ago, who Tiffany Prescott Caldwell Gus said she is a 20% shareholder in the company that received the stolen funds that connects her directly to the fraud. She can't claim she didn't know. She can't claim her parents did this without her. Her name is on the incorporation papers. This is conspiracy. This is wire fraud. This is money laundering. I turned back to Gus. Print it, print everything. Every transaction, every date, every IP address. Gus hit the print button. The laser printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out pages of evidence. So Gus asked, leaning back in his chair, "You have enough to go to the police. You can have them arrested for fraud. It might take a few months for the investigation, but you will get them eventually." "No," I said, picking up the warm stack of papers. "The police are for later. If I go to the police now, Tiffany will claim it is a civil dispute. She will use the money she stole to hire a defense lawyer. She will drag this out in court for years while she keeps my grandsons away from me. She will spend every dime before a judge even bangs a gavel. Then what are you going to do?" I looked at the line item for the $85,000 gambling debt repayment. I looked at the name of the bank in Florida that held the mortgage on Jerry Prescott's house. I am a businessman, Gus. I understand leverage. Jerry Prescott didn't just pay off a debt. He revealed his weakness. He is broke. He is desperate. And he is stupid. I pulled out my phone. It was 5:00 a.m. Banks in London were already open. I have connections in the debt purchasing market. I am not going to arrest them, Gus. Not yet. I am going to buy them. I am going to buy Jerry Prescott's debt. I am going to buy the note on his house. I am going to become the man who owns the roof over their heads. And then, when they are sitting comfortable in their stolen life, thinking they are safe, I am going to pull the rug out from under them so hard they will wish they had never been born. I put the papers in my briefcase. Gus, find out who holds the mortgage on Jerry's house in Boca Raton, and find out if he has any other outstanding loans. I want to own every cent he owes. Gus smiled a slow, predatory grin. "You are going to foreclose on your in-laws. I am going to evict them from their lives." I corrected him. I walked out of the office into the pre-dawn light. The city was waking up. People were going to work unaware that a war had just been declared in their midst. I got into my truck and placed the thick file of evidence on the passenger seat. Tiffany wanted a lifestyle she didn't earn. She wanted a Range Rover and a Rolex. She was about to find out that the price of those things was everything she had. I started the engine. Next stop, the school. I needed to see exactly where my money was going because I had a feeling Bright Horizons Academy wasn't the only lie in Tiffany's ledger. It was 8:00 in the morning when my phone vibrated against the leather console of my truck. I was parked 3 houses down from the home I had helped Daniel by the engine idling quietly, the heater battling the Chicago freeze. I picked up the phone. It was a text from Tiffany. "Dad, I hate to ask you this with everything going on, but Leo and Max need their tuition paid for this month. Bright Horizons is threatening to give their spots away if we don't pay by noon. It is $5,000. Please do it for the boys." I stared at the screen. Bright Horizons. I knew the place. It was one of the premier early learning centers in the city. They taught Mandarin and violin to 3-year-olds. It was exactly the kind of place Daniel would want for his sons. It was also exactly the kind of place Tiffany would use to bleed me dry. I didn't reply. Instead, I put the truck into gear. Down the street, the garage door of Daniel's house opened. The white Range Rover Sport backed out, its pristine paint gleaming against the dirty snowbanks. Tiffany was behind the wheel wearing large sunglasses and looking every inch the grieving, stressed mother she pretended to be. She turned left heading toward the highway. I followed, keeping 2 cars between us. I expected her to head north toward the suburbs where Bright Horizons had its campus, but she didn't. She merged onto the Dan Ryan Expressway and headed south. We drove past the skyline, past the tourist spots, past the gentrified neighborhoods. The scenery began to change. The glass towers were replaced by crumbling brick factories and vacant lots. We were heading into the deep South Side, an area where luxury SUVs usually didn't go unless they were lost or looking for trouble. She exited the highway and navigated through a maze of potholes and cracked pavement. The streets were lined with houses that had boarded up windows and yards filled with frozen trash. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't the route to an elite international school. Tiffany slowed down and pulled up to the curb in front of a dilapidated single-story house. There was no sign. There was no playground. There was just a chain-link fence that was rusting and bending under the weight of the snow. A hand-painted wooden board nailed to the porch read, Miss Tanya's Child Care. I parked around the corner and watched through my telephoto lens. Tiffany got out. She didn't look happy. She opened the back door and pulled Leo and Max out. They weren't wearing their new winter coats. They were wearing thin jackets. Leo was clutching his backpack like a shield. She marched them to the front door. She didn't hug them. She didn't kneel down to say, "Have a good day." She rang the bell and a heavy-set woman in a stained sweatshirt opened the door. Tiffany shoved the boys inside, handed the woman a wad of cash and turned around. The door slammed shut. I sat there gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I knew places like this. They were unlicensed, unregulated warehouses for children. They cost maybe $400 a month. Tiffany was charging me $5,000 for an Ivy League education and dumping my grandsons in a place that looked like a holding cell. I waited until she drove off. Then I took a picture of the house. I marked the GPS coordinates. I wanted to kick that door down and take them, but I couldn't. Not yet. I didn't have the legal standing. Tiffany still had the emergency custody order. If I took them, I would be the kidnapper. I had to leave them there. It was a physical pain sharp and deep to put my truck in reverse and leave my blood behind in that rot. But I had to follow the money. I had to follow the predator. I caught up to the Range Rover a few miles later. She was driving fast now, aggressive, heading back toward the money. We drove north back to the Gold Coast, the playground of the wealthy. She pulled into the valet circle of the Peninsula Hotel. I watched as she tossed the keys to the valet and walked inside, her head held high. I parked in a garage across the street and opened my laptop. Gus had done his job well. When he located the Range Rover the night before, his team had managed to slip a listening device under the passenger seat and tap into the Bluetooth system. I put on my headphones and connected to the live feed. The audio was crisp. I heard the door of the Range Rover open. The valet was parking in the car, then silence for an hour while she was inside. I waited. I watched the hotel entrance. At noon, Tiffany emerged. She wasn't alone. Walking arm in arm with her was Linda Prescott, her mother. Linda was wearing a fur coat that looked like it cost more than my first house. They were laughing. They looked like sisters on a shopping spree, not a grandmother and mother in the midst of a family tragedy. They waited for the car. When the Range Rover pulled up, they got in. Tiffany in the driver's seat, Linda in the passenger seat. I turned the volume up. God, I needed that massage. Tiffany's voice filled my headphones. My shoulders were so tense from all the fake crying I had to do for the cops. Linda laughed a harsh, grating sound. "You are doing great, honey. Just keep it up." "Did the old man transfer the tuition money?" "Not yet," Tiffany replied, the engine roaring to life. "He is probably moving funds around. He thinks he is saving his grandkids from ignorance. If he knew they were at Tanya's eating crackers and watching TV all day, he would have a stroke." "He won't know," Linda said dismissively. "Harrison is a checkbook, not a detective. He is too busy playing the big shot builder to notice the details. And 5,000 is nothing to him. It is just a rounding error. So, where are we having lunch? The grill?" "Yes," Tiffany said. "I want the lobster salad." "And we need to celebrate," Jerry called. "He said the bank off his back thanks to that idiot Daniel's seed money." I started my truck and followed them, keeping a safe distance. They were heading to Gibson's, a steakhouse, where the bill for lunch would easily feed a family for a month. "How is Daniel?" Linda asked. The tone of her voice changed. It wasn't casual anymore. It was conspiratorial. "Is he still in the psych ward?" "He got out," Tiffany said, sounding annoyed. "His dad got some high-priced lawyer to spring him, but it doesn't matter. He's a wreck. I saw him before the cops took him. He couldn't even form a sentence. He was drooling." "Good." Linda said, "That means the dosage is right. You have to keep it up, Tiff. If he gets clear-headed, he might start remembering things. He might start looking at the accounts again." "I don't know how I am going to dose him if he isn't living at home," Tiffany said. "He will come back." Linda assured her, "He has nowhere else to go. He is weak. He loves you. He will come crawling back begging for forgiveness. And when he does, you be the sweet, forgiving wife. You make him a nice dinner. You make him his favorite coffee. And you put a little extra of the special sweetener in it." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Special sweetener. That stupid Daniel," Linda continued, chuckling darkly. "He probably thinks he is going crazy. He probably thinks he has genetic bipolar disorder. It is hilarious. You just need to keep him loopy for another month." "Just 1 month." "Why a month?" Tiffany asked. "Because the court hearing for permanent custody is in 3 weeks," Linda explained. "If he shows up to that hearing looking like a zombie stumbling over his words, the judge will give you everything. Full custody, the house, alimony, child support based on the old man's money. We will have total control. And once you have the court order, it doesn't matter if he gets sober. You will own him." I shuddered. It wasn't just greed. It was calculated biological warfare. They were chemically lobotomizing my son to win a court case. "What about Harrison?" Tiffany asked. "He looked suspicious last night." "Harrison is old," Linda scoffed. "He is losing his edge. He is just trying to save face. As long as you play the victim, as long as you keep crying about how much you love Daniel and how worried you are about his mental health, Harrison will be paralyzed. He won't attack the mother of his grandchildren. He is too soft. I looked at my reflection in the rear view mirror. My eyes were hard. My jaw was set. I had spent 40 years building skyscrapers, fighting unions, negotiating with corrupt city officials, and surviving economic collapses. I had buried a wife. I had raised a family. There was nothing soft about me. I listened as they pulled up to the restaurant. I heard the valet open the door. "Enjoy your lunch, ladies," the valet said. "We certainly will," Linda replied. The audio cut out as they exited the vehicle. I sat in my truck watching them walk into the restaurant. They looked untouchable. They looked like royalty. I picked up my phone and called Dr. Aries. "Doctor," I said, "I need you to run a full panel for heavy metals and veterinary sedatives, specifically ketamine or xylazine." "Why?" Dr. Aris asked. "Because I just heard my mother-in-law tell my daughter-in-law to put extra sweetener in my son's coffee to keep him a zombie for the court hearing." There was a silence on the line. Then Dr. Aries spoke, his voice cold. "Bring the samples to the lab immediately, Mr. Caldwell. If this is true, this is attempted murder." "It is true," I said. "And doctor?" "Yes, do not release the results to anyone but me and Rachel Sterling. We are going to need them for the party." "What party?" "The surprise party I am throwing for the Prescott family," I said. I hung up and put the truck in gear. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't tired. I was fueled by a cold, burning hatred that gave me infinite energy. I drove back toward my office. I had bank records. I had a confession on tape. I had photos of the neglect of my grandchildren, but I needed one more thing. I needed the kill shot. I called Gus. Gus, I said, I want you to look into Jerry Prescott's mortgage in Florida. I already did, Gus replied. It is a mess. He is 85,000 in arrears. The bank is threatening foreclosure. Who holds the paper? I asked. A small regional bank, Sunshine State Trust. Get them on the phone, I said. I want to buy the note. You want to buy his mortgage. I want to buy his debt. Gus, all of it. Every dime he owes to anyone. I want to be the one who decides if he sleeps in a bed or a box. Consider it done, Gus said. I drove on. The pieces were falling into place. They thought they were playing a game. They thought they were smart. But they forgot the golden rule of business. Never steal from a man who builds prisons for a living. I was about to construct a cage around them so tight they wouldn't even be able to breathe. And the best part, they would walk into it with a smile, thinking they were coming to collect a check. Scene 6 was over. The investigation was done. Now it was time for the execution. It was 6:00 in the evening, and the sky outside the penthouse windows had turned the color of a fresh bruise. Inside the safe house, the air was thick with tension. Daniel sat on the edge of the leather sofa, his hands clasping a glass of water so tightly his knuckles were white. He looked better than he had at the hospital, the color returning to his cheeks. But his eyes were still haunted. He looked like a man waiting for a jury to deliver a verdict on his life. The private elevator chimed softly, breaking the silence. The doors slid open and Dr. Aris stepped out, followed closely by Rachel Sterling. Neither of them was smiling. Dr. Aris carried a thick manila envelope under his arm. Rachel was holding her tablet, her face set in a grim line that I knew meant she was ready for war. I stood up from my armchair. "Do we have it?" Dr. Aris nodded. He walked to the coffee table and placed the envelope down. He didn't sit. He looked at Daniel with a mixture of professional detachment and profound pity. "Daniel, the doctor," said, his voice calm and measured, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. The results from the toxicology screen came back from the private lab an hour ago. We tested your blood for immediate substances and your hair follicles for a historical record of exposure." Daniel looked up, his voice trembling. "Am I bipolar? Do I have a chemical imbalance? Is it genetic?" "No," Dr. Aris said firmly. "You do not have bipolar disorder. You do not have schizophrenia. Your brain chemistry is perfectly normal." "Then why," Daniel whispered, "why did I lose time? Why did I break the lamps? Why did I scream at the walls?" "Because you were being poisoned," Dr. Aris said. The word hung in the air like smoke. "Poisoned." Daniel blinked, unable to process it. "We found high concentrations of benzodiazepines in your system." "Doctor." Aris continued, opening the file and pointing to a chart with red spikes, specifically a generic form of Xanax and Valium. "But that isn't the worst part. We also found significant traces of xylazine." "What is xylazine?" Daniel asked. "It is a veterinary sedative," the doctor explained. "It is used for anesthesia in horses and cattle. It is a muscle relaxant and a central nervous system depressant. In humans, when mixed with benzodiazepines, it causes extreme lethargy, memory loss, and periods of confusion. But as it wears off, it causes a rebound effect. Agitation, aggression, hallucinations. It mimics a psychotic break perfectly. I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice." Xylazine. That was the special sweetener Linda had laughed about. They were treating my son like livestock. "This wasn't recreational, doctor," Aris said, tapping the paper. "The hair analysis shows a pattern. The dosage started low 3 months ago and increased steadily. It peaked last week. The timing corresponds exactly with your supposed episodes. Someone was administering this to you daily, likely in a liquid to mask the taste." "The coffee," Daniel whispered. His face went gray. "Every night she made me coffee. She bought that hazelnut creamer." She said it was to help me relax after working on the code. She would stand there and watch me drink it. She wouldn't let me put the cup down until it was finished. I stared at the floor, his eyes wide with horror as the memories flooded back. She would film me, Daniel said, his voice rising in panic. I remember now. I would be stumbling around the living room feeling like my head was full of cotton, and she would be standing there with her phone. They are evidence of her crime. But Daniel wasn't listening to the legal strategy. The reality of the betrayal hit him physically. He clutched his stomach, doubling over. The woman he loved, the mother of his children. The person he slept next to for 5 years had been systematically destroying his mind to steal his money. She had watched him deteriorate. She had comforted him while holding the poison. "I think I am going to be sick," Daniel gasped. He ran for the bathroom. I heard the door slam, followed by the violent sounds of retching. He was purging the betrayal. He was vomiting up the last remnants of the life he thought he had. I looked at Dr. Aries. "Is there permanent damage?" "Physically, he will recover. The doctor said the liver is resilient, but psychologically, Harrison, I don't know. To be gaslit on this scale, to be made to believe you are losing your own mind, that leaves scars. He will need therapy." A lot of it. I walked to the bathroom door. It was quiet now. I pushed it open gently. Daniel was sitting on the floor, leaning against the tub. His face was wet with sweat and tears. He looked like a child again, small and broken. "Dad," he choked out. "She tried to turn me into a vegetable. She wanted to lock me away forever. How could she do that? How could anyone do that?" I sat down on the cold tiles next to him. I put my arm around his shoulders and pulled him close. He wept into my shirt, his body shaking with deep, racking sobs. "Because she is evil, son," I said softly. "Because she doesn't have a soul. She saw you as an obstacle to a paycheck." I let him cry until there were no tears left. I let him mourn the death of his marriage. Then I handed him a towel. "Wipe your face, Daniel." He took the towel and scrubbed his face hard as if trying to erase the last few days. He looked at me. His eyes were red, but the fear was gone. It was replaced by something else, something harder, something I recognized. It was hate. "What do we do, Dad?" he asked. "She has the boys, she has the house. She thinks I am in a padded room." I stood up and offered him a hand. He took it and pulled himself up. He stood tall. "We are going to use her arrogance against her," I said. "She thinks she has one. She thinks you are incapacitated. She thinks I am a confused old man who just wants to keep the peace." I led him back out to the living room. Rachel and Dr. Aris were waiting. "Dr. Aris," I said, "I need you to certify these results. I want an official affidavit stating that Daniel was poisoned." "Consider it done," the doctor said. "And Rachel," I continued, "I need you to prepare a petition for her own for emergency custody based on imminent danger. But do not file it yet." "Why not?" Rachel asked. "We have the smoking gun. Because if we file it now, she will run." I said she will take the remaining money and disappear with the boys, or worse, she will claim the results are faked. We need to catch her in a lie she can't escape. We need a confession or something close to it. How? Daniel asked. I looked at the file on the table. I looked at the city lights burning outside. "We are going to give her exactly what she wants." I said she wants control. She wants money. She wants you out of the picture, so we are going to offer it to her. I walked to the window. "Tomorrow I am going to pay a visit to Tiffany. I am going to play the role of the defeated, disappointed grandfather. I am going to tell her that I accept the diagnosis. I am going to tell her that I want to set up a trust fund for the boys because their father is unfit." Daniel stiffened. "Dad, no. Trust me," I said, turning back to him. "I am going to dangle a $2 million carrot in front of her face, and when she opens her mouth to take a bite, I am going to snap the trap shut." I looked at Rachel. "Get the paperwork ready for a trust fund meeting. Invite Tiffany, Jerry, and Linda. Tell them we are signing over control of the assets. Get them all in one room." "And then what?" Rachel asked, a small smile playing on her lips. "And then," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, "then we show them the test results. Then we show them the bank transfers. Then we introduced them to the new owner of their debt. I walked over to Daniel and put my hands on his shoulders. "Stop crying, son. You are done being the victim. Tonight you sleep. Tomorrow you suit up. Because the next time you see your wife, you are not going to be the husband she drugged. You are going to be the witness who sends her to prison." Daniel nodded. He took a deep breath. His jaw set. "Okay, Dad," he said, "let's go hunting." Scene 7 ended with the silence of a plan set in motion. The evidence was undeniable. The poison was real. The betrayal was absolute. There was no going back now. The only way out was through the destruction of the Prescott family, and I was ready to light the match. The morning sun pierced through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown penthouse, but it did little to warm the cold determination settling in my chest. Daniel was asleep in the guest room, finally resting, without the chemical haze of sedatives clouding his mind. I sat at the glass conference table with a fresh pot of black coffee and my laptop open. On the screen was a video call with Gus. He looked like he had been living on energy drinks and spite for the last 24 hours. "Harrison," Gus said, his voice crackling slightly over the secure connection. "I found the pressure point. And it is not just a crack in the armor. It is a gaping wound." "Show me," I said, taking a sip of coffee. Gus shared his screen. It was a credit report and a property lien search for Gerald Jerry Prescott in Boca Raton, Florida. The numbers were staggering. Jerry Prescott presented himself as a successful real estate developer, a man of leisure who spent his days on the golf course. The documents told a different story. "He is drowning," Gus explained, using his cursor to highlight a specific entry. "This is the mortgage on his primary residence, a sprawling 5-bedroom villa on the waterfront. He took out a second mortgage 3 years ago to fund a commercial project that never broke ground. The principal amount is $850,000. I looked at the number, $850,000. It was a significant sum even for a man of means. For a man like Jerry, it was a death sentence. "He is in default," Gus continued. "He hasn't paid the principal in 6 months. The bank Sunshine State Trust initiated foreclosure proceedings 90 days ago. That $85,000 he wired from Daniel's stolen funds last week, that wasn't to pay off the house. That was just to pay the back interest and the penalties to stop the sheriff from putting an eviction notice on his front door. He bought himself time, maybe 2 months, but the underlying debt is still there, and the bank hates him. They view him as a toxic asset." I leaned back in my chair. A toxic asset. In the world of finance, that means a liability you want to get rid of at any cost. Jerry Prescott wasn't just a thief. He was a bad investment. "Who is the asset manager handling the file at Sunshine State Trust?" I asked. "A guy named Robert Miller," Gus replied. "He is the VP of Distressed Assets. I have his direct line." "Send it to me," I said. And Gus sent me the full legal description of the property and the loan number. "You are going to call him?" Gus asked. "I am going to do more than call him," I said. "I am going to solve his problem." I hung up with Gus and dialed the number for Sunshine State Trust. It was 9:00 a.m. in Florida. Banks were open. Business was moving. Robert Miller answered on the third ring. He sounded tired. Dealing with people like Jerry Prescott would make anyone tired. "Mr. Miller," I said, keeping my voice professional and authoritative. "My name is Harrison Caldwell. I am the principal of Caldwell Holdings in Chicago. You may know my firm." There was a pause. The name Caldwell carries weight in the construction and development world. "Yes," Mr. Caldwell Miller said, his tone shifting instantly to respectful. "I know of your work. How can I help you?" "I understand you hold a non-performing note on a property in Boca Raton," I said, getting straight to the point. "The borrower is Gerald Prescott. Loan number ending in 459. Miller hesitated. "Privacy laws prevent me from discussing specific client accounts." "Mr. Caldwell, I understand," I interrupted. "I am not asking you to discuss his account. I am calling to make you an offer to purchase the debt. I want to buy the note in full cash today. The silence on the other end was heavy. Banks usually sell bad debt for pennies on the dollar to collection agencies. They lose money on every deal. I was offering him a miracle. "You want to buy the Prescott note?" Miller asked, disbelief coloring his voice. "At face value, I want to buy the assignment of the mortgage and the promissory note," I clarified. "I will wire you $850,000 plus whatever legal fees and administrative costs you have incurred. In exchange, you transfer all rights of the creditor to Caldwell Holdings. I become the bank." Miller didn't ask why. He didn't care why. He just saw a way to clear a massive red stain off his ledger before the quarterly report. "If you can verify funds, Mr. Caldwell, I can have the assignment documents drafted within the hour," Miller said, trying not to sound too eager. "I will have my CFO wire the proof of funds immediately," I said. "Send the contract to my email. I want this closed by noon." I hung up and called my personal banker. I authorized the transfer. $850,000. It was a lot of money to spend on revenge. But I wasn't just buying a piece of paper. I was buying control. For the next 2 hours, I sat at the table reviewing documents as they came in: the assignment of mortgage, the transfer of lien, the legal power to foreclose. I signed them digitally. I watched the progress bar on the wire transfer move from pending to complete. At 11:45 a.m. my phone pinged. It was an email from Robert Miller. "Transaction complete. The file is yours. Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Caldwell." I closed my laptop and walked to the window. I looked out at the frozen city of Chicago, but my mind was in sunny Florida. I imagined Jerry Prescott sitting by his pool, sipping a drink paid for with my son's money. I imagined him laughing with Linda, thinking they had pulled off the perfect crime. They thought they had used the stolen funds to save their house. They thought they were safe. They had no idea that the money they stole had just led the wolf right to their door. By purchasing the debt, I had bypassed the need for a court order. I didn't need to sue them. I didn't need to prove fraud. I simply stepped into the shoes of the bank. And unlike the bank, I had no interest in negotiating. I had no interest in payment plans. I checked the terms of the mortgage. It had a specific clause called the insecurity clause. It allowed the lender to call the entire loan due immediately if the lender reasonably believed the collateral or the borrower's ability to pay was impaired. Given that Jerry was unemployed and living on stolen funds, his ability to pay was non-existent. I could call the loan today. I could send a sheriff to post a foreclosure notice on his gate this afternoon. I could have them on the street by the weekend, but I didn't. I wanted more than just their house. I wanted their hope. I wanted them to walk into the trap willingly. I picked up my phone and called Rachel Sterling. "Do you have the paperwork ready for the trust fund meeting?" I asked. "Yes," Rachel replied. "I have drafted a dummy trust agreement. It names Tiffany as the sole trustee of a $2 million educational fund for the boys. It looks very official, very tempting." "Good," I said. "Send the invitations. Tell them I want to meet on Friday at your office. Tell them I want to sign everything over so I can retire in peace. Tell them I am tired of fighting. They will come running." Rachel said, "They are greedy, Harrison. They won't be able to resist." "I know," I said. And Rachel, "Yes. Add a clause to the meeting agenda, a review of assets and liabilities. Tell them it is standard procedure for the trust." "Why?" "Because I want to see Jerry's face when I put the foreclosure notice on the table next to the check he thinks he is getting." I hung up the phone. I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my bones. I was now the owner of my enemy's debt. I held the deed to their sanctuary. They were living in my house. They were sleeping under my roof and they didn't even know it. I walked into the kitchen to pour another cup of coffee. Daniel was awake, standing by the counter looking at a picture of Leo and Max on his phone. "Did you find anything?" he asked, his voice hopeful but scared. I put a hand on his shoulder. "I found everything, Daniel, and I just bought us a very big hammer. Get dressed. We have a meeting to prepare for, and you need to look like a man who has lost everything so they don't see the man who is about to take everything back. Scene 8 was complete. The financial noose was around their necks. Now all I had to do was kick the chair. It was Thursday afternoon when I pulled my black Ram truck into the driveway of the colonial house in Neepville. The house looked exactly as it had the day I bought it for Daniel and Tiffany. The lawn was manicured. The shutters were painted a tasteful slate gray, and the American flag hung limp on the porch. It was the picture of suburban perfection. It was a lie. I sat in the truck for a moment, staring at the front door. I checked my reflection in the rear view mirror. I had to change my demeanor. I couldn't be the shark who had just bought $850,000 worth of debt. I couldn't be the man who had ordered a forensic toxicology screen. I had to be a grandfather. I had to be a tired, defeated old man who was overwhelmed by his son's mental illness and just wanted to ensure his legacy was safe. I slumped my shoulders. I loosened my tie. I let the exhaustion I had been fighting for days finally show on my face. It wasn't hard to act tired. The rage was exhausting. I walked up the path and rang the doorbell. I waited. I knew she was home. Her new Range Rover was parked in the garage. I could hear the faint sound of a television inside. The door opened. Tiffany stood there. She was wearing designer yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, looking fresh and rested. When she saw me, her face immediately shifted into a mask of guarded concern. She didn't invite me in. She stood in the doorway, blocking the view of the interior like a gatekeeper protecting her fortress. "Harrison," she said, her voice cool. "I didn't expect to see you. Is he back in the hospital?" I looked down at my boots, avoiding her eyes. I let out a heavy sigh. "Can I come in, Tiffany?" I asked, keeping my voice low and devoid of energy. "I just need to sit down for a minute. I have been doing a lot of thinking." She hesitated. She scanned the driveway to make sure I was alone. Seeing no police, no lawyers, just a broken old man, she stepped back. "Of course, Dad, come in." I walked into the foyer. The house smelled of expensive candles, vanilla and sandalwood. It was clean, immaculate. There were no toys on the floor. It didn't look like a home where children lived. It looked like a staging area for a real estate sale. "Where are the boys?" I asked, looking toward the living room. "They are at school," she lied smoothly. "At Bright Horizons. They love it there. It gives them stability while their father is going through this." I nodded, swallowing the bile that rose in my throat. I knew exactly where they were. They were at Miss Tanya's illegal daycare on the south side, probably eating generic cereal while she enjoyed her vanilla candles, but I didn't challenge her. I nodded like a senile fool. "That is good," I said. "Stability is important." I walked into the kitchen and sat at the island. Tiffany stayed on this other side, leaning against the counter, her arms crossed. She was analyzing me, looking for a trap. "What are you doing here, Harrison?" she asked. I rubbed my face with my hands. "I owe you an apology, Tiffany." Her eyebrows shot up. "An apology?" "Yes," I said. "I was angry. I was defensive. When you told me Daniel had a gambling problem, I didn't want to believe it. He is my son. I raised him better than that. But I spoke to the doctors. I saw the way he was acting, the paranoia, the aggression." I looked up at her, making sure my eyes looked watery and defeated. "You were right," I whispered. "He is broken. I don't know if it is drugs or gambling or mental illness, but the man I saw in that hospital, that wasn't my Daniel, and I was wrong to blame you. You were just trying to protect the children." Tiffany's posture relaxed instantly. Her shoulders dropped. A small triumphant smile touched the corners of her lips before she smoothed it back into a frown of sympathy. "Oh, Dad," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I tried to tell you it has been a nightmare for me, living with his mood swings, hiding the money so he wouldn't steal it. I just want him to get better." "I know," I said. "And he won't get better if I keep enabling him. I realized that last night. If I give him access to money, he will just lose it again. Or worse." I reached into my jacket pocket. Tiffany flinched, perhaps expecting a subpoena. Instead, I pulled out a leather notebook. I opened it and stared at a page of scribbled numbers. I am 70 years old, Tiffany, I said. I am tired of fighting. I built my company from nothing, and I wanted to leave it to Daniel, but I can't trust him. Not anymore. If I leave him my estate, he will gamble it away in a year and my grandsons will be destitute. I paused, letting the silence stretch. I watched her eyes. They were locked on the notebook. So I have made a decision, I continued. I am going to bypass Daniel completely. I want to set up an irrevocable trust for Leo and Max. I want to secure their future so that no matter what happens to Daniel, they will go to the best colleges. They will have cars, they will have houses, they will have everything I worked for. Tiffany leaned forward. A trust fund. Yes, I said. I am prepared to seed it with $2 million immediately. Cash, $2 million. The number hung in the air between us. I saw the physical reaction in her body. Her pupils dilated, her breathing hitched. It was the reaction of an addict seeing a fix. That is very generous of you, Harrison, she stammered. The boys deserve it. Yes, they do, I said, but there is a problem. A trust needs a trustee, someone to manage the investments, someone to authorize the expenses. It can't be Daniel. He is legally incompetent right now, and I am too old. I might not be here in 10 years. I looked at her directly. It has to be you, Tiffany. You are their mother. You are the only responsible adult left in this equation. I want to name you the sole trustee. You would have full control over the disbursements for their care, their housing, their lifestyle. Full control, she repeated, testing the words on her tongue like a fine wine. Yes, I said. I trust you to do what is right. I see that now. You drove a hard bargain with me before because you were trying to survive. I respect that. You are a fighter. Tiffany walked around the counter. She put her hand on my shoulder. It took every ounce of my willpower not to recoil from her touch. Dad, she said softly, I would be honored. I will protect that money with my life. I will make sure the boys have everything they need, and Daniel, we will get him help. Maybe one day he can be part of this too. I nodded slowly, standing up. I pretended to use the counter for support, acting frail. Thank you, Tiffany. That takes a weight off my mind. I have already instructed my lawyer, Rachel Sterling, to draw up the papers. Rachel Sterling, Tiffany said, a flicker of worry crossing her face. Isn't she the one who she is the best? I interrupted. And for a trust this size, we need the best to make sure it is bulletproof. To make sure no one, not even Daniel, can challenge it later. That made sense to her. She nodded. I want to sign the papers on Friday, I said. I want this done before the weekend so I can sleep at night. Can you come to her office at 2 p.m.? I will be there, she promised. Bring your parents, I added casually as I walked toward the door. Jerry and Linda, I want them to be witnesses. And honestly, I want to apologize to them too. I was rude to them. They were just supporting their daughter. We should be a united family for the sake of the boys. That is a wonderful idea, Tiffany beamed. They will be so happy to hear that. They have been so worried about the financial situation. I bet they have, I thought. I will see you on Friday, Tiffany, I said. I walked out of the house and down the driveway to my truck. I didn't look back. I climbed into the cab and drove away slowly like a careful old man. But as soon as I turned the corner and was out of sight, I pressed the accelerator and the engine roared. I reached for the laptop bag on the passenger seat and pulled out my headphones. I put them on. The bug in the kitchen was live. I heard the sound of a phone dialing. Then Tiffany's voice, loud and jubilant. Mom, pick up. You are not going to believe this. There was a pause. Then Linda's voice came through the speakers. What is it? Did Daniel come back? No better, the old man was just here. Harrison, he is broken, Mom. He totally bought the gambling story. He thinks Daniel is a lost cause. Seriously. Linda laughed. I told you he was soft. He wants to give us $2 million, Mom. He wants to set up a trust for the boys, and he wants me to be the sole trustee. Full control. He said it himself. He wants me to manage the lifestyle. $2 million. Linda shrieked. Oh my God, we are rich. We are actually rich. and he wants to meet on Friday to sign the papers. He wants you and Dad to come. He wants to apologize to you. Can you believe it? The arrogant jerk wants to beg for our forgiveness. Tell him yes. Tell him we will be there with bells on. Oh, Tiff, you did it. You played him perfectly. I hung up the phone. Tiffany said, I have to call Dad. He needs to cancel his bankruptcy meeting. We don't need it anymore. We are getting a bailout. I took the headphones off. The silence in the truck was sweet. They took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. They thought they were walking into a coronation. They thought they were going to sign a piece of paper that would fund their parasitic lifestyle for the next 20 years. They had no idea that the only thing waiting for them and Rachel Sterling's office, was a foreclosure notice, a criminal indictment, and the end of their lives as they knew them. I drove toward the construction site of my new high-rise project. I needed to see steel and concrete. I needed to see honest work. I checked my watch. It was Thursday evening, 24 hours. In 24 hours, the trap would snap shut, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. The conference room at Sterling Law is designed to intimidate. It is on the 42nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows that offer a panoramic view of the Chicago skyline and the freezing gray expanse of Lake Michigan. The table is a 20-foot slab of polished black marble. The chairs are Italian leather. It is a room where companies are bought, sold, and destroyed. I sat at the head of the table at 1:55 in the afternoon. Rachel Sterling sat to my right, her posture perfect, a stack of documents arranged with surgical precision in front of her. I was wearing my best suit, a charcoal gray brony, but I had deliberately slumped my shoulders and left my tie slightly askew. I needed to look like a man who was giving up. At exactly 2:00, the double mahogany doors opened. The receptionist announced the arrival of the Prescott family. They walked in like they were attending a coronation. Tiffany led the way. She was wearing a new navy blue Chanel dress that I knew cost at least $4,000. Her hair was blown out perfectly. She held her head high, projecting the image of the capable, long-suffering wife who was finally getting her due. Behind her came Jerry and Linda Prescott. I had seen their photos in Gus's file, but seeing them in person made my skin crawl. Jerry was wearing a tan suit that was a little too tight, a gold watch that looked flashy but cheap, and a smile that showed too many teeth. He looked exactly like what he was, a desperate gambler who thought he had just hit the jackpot. Linda was draped in jewelry, her eyes darting around the room, assessing the value of everything she saw. Jerry boomed, walking toward me with his hand extended. It is so good to see you under tragic circumstances, of course, but it is good that we can come together as a family. I stood up slowly, leaning heavily on the table as if my legs were weak. I shook his hand. His palm was sweaty. Thank you for coming, Jerry, I said, keeping my voice low and weary. Linda, Tiffany, please sit down. They took the seats opposite us. They looked comfortable. They looked entitled. They looked at the documents on the table like hungry wolves eyeing a wounded deer. Rachel cleared her throat. She didn't smile. Let us begin, she said, her voice professional and cold. Mr. Caldwell has instructed me to expedite the creation of the Caldwell Family Trust for the benefit of his grandchildren, Leo and Max. As discussed, the initial funding amount is $2 million. I saw Jerry nudge Linda under the table. Their eyes lit up. $2 million. To them, it was a lifeline. It was freedom from debt. It was more cruises and more gambling. However, Rachel continued, because Mr. Daniel Caldwell is currently incapacitated and unable to manage his affairs, we need to establish a clear chain of custody for the assets. We need to appoint a trustee who has demonstrated full financial responsibility. That would be me, Tiffany said quickly, straightening her posture. Harrison said I would be the sole trustee. Correct, I said, nodding slowly. I want you to have control, Tiffany. You know what the boys need. Rachel slid a thick document across the black marble. This is the trust agreement, Rachel explained. It outlines your powers as trustee. But before you sign the acceptance of funds, we need to clear up some administrative housekeeping regarding your current household finances. Housekeeping? Jerry asked, frowning slightly. Standard due diligence, Rachel said smoothly. To transfer assets of this magnitude, we need to certify that the trustee has been the primary financial decision-maker for the beneficiaries. We need to prove that Tiffany, and not Daniel, has been managing the household funds effectively. This protects the trust from any future claims Daniel might make if he recovers. It was a brilliant lie. Rachel was framing the trap as a way to protect Tiffany's power. Oh, absolutely, Tiffany said, eager to prove her dominance. I have been doing everything. Daniel has been useless for months. I pay the bills. I manage the accounts. I make all the purchasing decisions. Excellent, Rachel said. She pulled a single sheet of paper from the bottom of the stack and placed it in front of Tiffany. Then I need you to sign this affidavit of financial responsibility. It is a sworn statement confirming that, for the past 6 months, you have had sole access to and control over the joint accounts, that you authorized all major transactions, and that you were fully aware of the allocation of all funds, including the investment capital provided by Mr. Caldwell. Tiffany didn't even read it. She didn't pause to think about why she was admitting to controlling the investment capital that was supposed to be in a corporate account. She just heard the word sole control and grabbed the Mont Blanc pen Rachel offered. Of course, Tiffany said, signing her name with a flourish. I controlled everything. Daniel didn't even know the password. Rachel collected the papers. She placed them neatly in a folder and closed it. The sound of the folder snapping shut echoed in the silent room. Now about the check, Jerry said, rubbing his hands together. Do we get that today? The bank closes at 5. I looked at Jerry. I looked at the greed etched into every line of his face. I looked at Tiffany, who was smiling at me like the cat who had eaten the canary. I sat up straighter. I adjusted my tie. I rolled my shoulders back, shedding the posture of the defeated old man. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cold, clean air of the skyscraper. The mask dropped. I looked Jerry dead in the eye. The warmth was gone from my face. The confusion was gone. All that was left was the predator. There is no check, Jerry, I said, my voice strong and steady. The smile froze on his face. What? There is no trust fund, I continued. There is no $2 million and there is no bailout. Tiffany looked confused. But you said the papers. I pointed to the folder Rachel was holding. Those papers, those aren't trust documents, Tiffany. Those are confessions. You just admitted under penalty of perjury that you controlled the $325,000 I gave Daniel. You admitted you spent it. You admitted you authorized every transaction. That means you can't say Daniel gambled it away. You just confessed to grand larceny and wire fraud. The color drained from Tiffany's face so fast she looked like a corpse. What is going on? Linda screeched. Harrison, have you lost your mind? No, Linda, I said. I found it. Just like I found the transactions to the Hard Rock Casino. Just like I found the invoice for the Range Rover. Just like I found the tuition payments you didn't make while my grandson sit in a basement daycare. I stood up. I walked to the window and pressed a button on the wall. The blinds retracted, flooding the room with harsh afternoon light. You thought I was a senile old man you could manipulate, I said, turning back to face them. You thought you could drug my son, frame him for insanity, and steal my fortune. You thought you were playing a game. I picked up the file Rachel had prepared for the next phase. You forgot one thing, Tiffany. I built this city. I deal with sharks and gangsters and corrupt politicians every day. Compared to them, you are just a greedy child. Jerry stood up, his face turning red. I am leaving. Come on, Linda. We don't have to listen to this. We are going to sue you. Sit down, Jerry. I barked. The command was so loud, so authoritative that he actually sat back down before he realized what he was doing. You aren't going anywhere, I said, because we haven't even started. That was just the appetizer. Now it is time for the dessert. I nodded to Rachel. She opened the conference room door. But it wasn't the police who walked in. Not yet. It was Daniel. He walked in wearing a suit, clean-shaven, clear-eyed, and looking stronger than I had ever seen him. He wasn't the broken man from the parking lot. He wasn't the drugged victim from the hospital. He was a father who had come for his children. He walked to the table and stood next to me. He looked at Tiffany. She shrank back in her chair, terrifying recognition dawning in her eyes. "Hello, Tiffany," Daniel said. His voice was ice. "How was the coffee this morning? I hear you ran out of sweetener. The trap was sprung. The door was locked, and now the execution could begin." The silence in the conference room was shattered by the arrival of Daniel. Tiffany looked at him as if he were a ghost. She had been so sure he was locked away, drooling in a hospital bed, that seeing him standing tall, wearing a suit, and looking at her with cold fury broke something in her brain. She tried to speak, but only a strangled noise came out. Jerry recovered first. He slammed his hand on the table trying to usher some bluster. "This is entrapment. This is harassment. We signed those papers under duress. We are leaving." "Not yet, Jerry," I said, picking up a remote control. "We haven't even gotten to the entertainment portion of the evening." I pressed a button. The large 85-inch screen on the wall flickered to life. The audio was crisp and clear, booming through the surround sound speakers. It was the recording from the Range Rover. "He will come crawling back, begging for forgiveness." Linda's voice echoed through the room. "And when he does, you be the sweet, forgiving wife. You make him a nice dinner. You make him his favorite coffee, and you put a little extra of the special sweetener in it." I watched Linda. Her jaw dropped. Her hand flew to her mouth. She looked at the screen, then at me, then at the hidden microphone she now realized must have been everywhere. "But wait," I said, "there is more." The screen changed. Now it showed a spreadsheet, a forensic accounting of every dime stolen from Daniel. The wire transfer to Prescott Ventures, the payoff to the Hard Rock Casino, the down payment on the Range Rover, the cruise tickets. It was all there laid out in undeniable black and white, and finally the PSA resistance. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen displayed the toxicology report from Dr. Paris, the red spikes showing the benzodiazepines, the high levels of xylazine, the horse tranquilizer. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning hum. "This," I said, pointing to the screen, "is proof of attempted murder, poisoning, systematically destroying a human being's mind for profit." Tiffany started to shake. It wasn't a tremble. It was a violent full-body shudder. She looked at her parents, desperate for them to fix it, but they were frozen in their own horror. "You can't prove I did it," she whispered, her voice thin and ready. "Anyone could have put that in his coffee. He did it to himself. He is an addict." "Nice try, Tiffany," Daniel said, stepping forward. "But we checked the canister of hazelnut creamer in the kitchen, the one you insisted only I use. The lab found enough xylazine in it to knock out a thoroughbred, and your fingerprints are all over the hidden stash we found taped under the sink in the master bathroom." Her eyes widened. She had forgotten about the stash. Jerry stood up again, his face purple. "We are leaving right now. You can talk to our lawyer. We are done here." "Actually, Jerry," I said, my voice dropping to a conversational tone that was far more terrifying than a shout. "You have a bigger problem than lawyers. You have a housing problem, he spat. "What are you talking about? My house is fine. I paid the Rs. You paid the Rs with stolen money." I corrected him. "Which means the payment is fraudulent and can be clawed back. But that doesn't matter anymore because you don't owe the bank. You owe me." I slid a single piece of paper across the table toward him. It was the assignment of mortgage. "I bought your debt yesterday, Jerry. Sunshine State Trust was very happy to get you off their books. I now own the note on your villa in Boca Raton, and as the new lien holder, I have reviewed your file. You are in default on the principal. You are unemployed. Your income is based on theft." I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "I have activated the insecurity clause in the mortgage contract. I have called the entire loan due immediately. $850,000. Can you write me a check right now? Jerry stared at the paper. His hands shook. No, no, you can't do that. There are laws. There are eviction protections. Not for commercial investment loans, which is how you structured it to get a tax break. Remember, I said, and since you can't pay, I have already moved to the next step. I checked my watch. Right about now, the Palm Beach County Sheriff is arriving at your house. My team is there with a writ of possession. They are changing the locks, Jerry. They are cataloging your furniture to sell at auction to recover my costs. Your golf club's gone. Your boat seized. You are homeless. Linda let out a wail that sounded like a dying animal. My house, my things. My furs are in that closet. Not your furs, Linda, I said coldly. My collateral. Tiffany looked from her parents to me, realizing the walls were closing in from every side. She stood up, knocking her chair over. I am taking the boys, she screamed. You can have the money. You can have the house. But I am taking my children. You will never see them again. She turned to run for the door, but before she could reach the handle, the heavy mahogany doors swung open from the outside. It wasn't room service. It wasn't a secretary. Two uniformed officers from the Chicago Police Department stepped into the room, followed by a detective in a cheap suit who looked very, very tired of people like Tiffany. Tiffany Prescott, the detective said, holding up a warrant. You are under arrest for aggravated battery with the toxic substance wire fraud and child endangerment. No, she shrieked, backing away. You can't, I'm a mother. The officers moved in. They didn't treat her like a lady in a Chanel dress. They treated her like a suspect. They grabbed her arms. They spun her around. The click of the handcuffs was the sweetest sound I had heard in years. Dad, help me do something. Tiffany yelled at Jerry, but Jerry was slumped in his chair, staring at the foreclosure document, realizing his life of leisure was over. He didn't even look at her. Daniel walked up to her as the officers began to drag her out. He looked at the woman who had vowed to love him, the woman who had tried to erase him. The boys are safe, Tiffany, Daniel said softly. I picked them up from that hellhole daycare an hour ago. They are with Mrs. Higgins eating cookies. Real cookies, not stale crackers in a parking lot. They are going to be fine. They are going to forget you. You can't do this to me, she screamed as they hauled her through the door. I am the victim. He is crazy. He is crazy. Her screams faded down the hallway, cut off by the closing of the elevator doors. The silence returned to the conference room. Linda was sobbing quietly into her hands. Jerry was staring at the wall, a broken man. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. Rachel, I said, please show Mr. and Mrs. Prescott out and make sure they understand that if they step foot in Illinois or Florida again, I will have them arrested for conspiracy. They have 24 hours to vacate the state. Where will we go? Linda whimpered. We have nothing. I looked at them with zero sympathy. I hear the weather is nice in North Dakota, I said, and I hear they are hiring at the gas stations. It is honest work. You should try it sometime. I walked out of the room, Daniel by my side. We didn't look back. We took the elevator down to the lobby and walked out into the cold Chicago afternoon. The wind was still biting, but for the first time in a week, the sun felt warm on my face. It is over, Dad, Daniel said, taking a deep breath. No, son, I said, putting my arm around him. It is just beginning. Now we rebuild. And as we walked toward my truck, I knew that the hardest part of the construction was done. We had cleared the rubble. We had removed the rot. Now we could lay a new foundation. A foundation built on truth, on strength, and on the unshakable bond of a father and son who had walked through fire and come out the other side not as victims, but as kings. 6 months is a lifetime in the construction business. In 6 months, you can dig a foundation deep enough to anchor a skyscraper, pour the concrete that will hold up the sky, and see the steel skeleton of a new legacy rise against the Chicago horizon. It is enough time to tear down a rotting structure and build something unbreakable in its place. I stood on the edge of my newest site in the West Loop, the wind whipping off Lake Michigan. But this time, the cold didn't bite. It felt fresh. It felt like the future. The noise of the city was drowned out by the symphony of industry that has been the soundtrack of my life. Jackhammer's diesel engines, the shouting of foremen, the rhythmic clang of steel on steel. To some people it is just noise. To me it is the sound of progress. It is the sound of winning. I adjusted my hard hat and looked across the chaotic yard. I wasn't looking at the building. I was looking at the man standing in the center of the activity. Daniel was wearing a white hard hat and a neon safety vest over his dress shirt. He was holding a tablet in one hand and pointing to a set of blueprints with the other, directing a crew of rough-necked iron workers who had been in the trade for 30 years. These were men who could smell weakness from a mile away. 6 months ago, they would have eaten him alive. They would have smelled his fear. Today, they were nodding. They were listening. Because the man talking to them wasn't the trembling victim I had pulled out of a frozen car at O'Hare. He wasn't the drugged husband stumbling through his own home. He was a Caldwell. He stood tall, his shoulders back, his voice projecting over the roar of the machinery. He had found his spine again. It had been forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered by the fight for his children. I looked toward the site trailer, a heated mobile off parked near the gate. Through the window, I could see Leo and Max. They were sitting at a drafting table playing with a set of miniature die-cast cranes I had bought them. They were laughing. They were warm, they were safe. They didn't ask about their mother anymore. Children are resilient, but they are also intuitive. They knew who protected them and who treated them like luggage. They knew who abandoned them in a basement daycare and who brought them home. Tiffany was currently residing in the protective custody wing of the Cook County Jail. Her request for bail had been denied 3 times. The judge, a woman with zero tolerance for child endangerment, had looked at the toxicology reports, proving she poisoned Daniel, and declared her a flight risk and a danger to the community. She was facing 15 years for attempted murder and fraud. She had aged 10 years in 6 months. The Botox had worn off, the hair dye had faded, and the arrogance had been replaced by the hollow look of someone who knows they have lost everything. She was no longer the queen of the suburbs. She was inmate number 4829. As for Jerry and Linda, justice had been less formal, but equally brutal, with their house foreclosed and their assets frozen by the civil suits Rachel Sterling had filed on my behalf. They had been forced to leave Florida. The last I heard, they were living in a Section 8 housing complex outside of Gary, Indiana. Jerry was working part-time at a hardware store and Linda was cleaning houses. It was a steep fall from the country club, but gravity is unforgiving when you build your life on theft. Daniel finished with the foreman and walked toward me. His stride was confident. He didn't look like a software engineer who had lost a startup. He looked like a partner. "Dad," he said, wiping dust from his screen, "I finished the beta test on the site management software." I looked at him. When he first came to work for me after the legal dust settled, he wanted to just be a laborer. He wanted to work with his hands to forget his mind. But I told him no. I told him to use his gift. I told him to build something that would make this company better, and I asked. He turned the tablet toward me. The screen displayed a complex 3D model of the supply chain and labor allocation. "It works," he said, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "By optimizing the delivery schedules and automating the vendor payments, we cut overhead by 15% in the first quarter. That is almost $2 million in savings on this project alone." 15%, I repeated, impressed. "That is not bad for a startup. It is better than Tech Flow," Daniel said, his smile fading slightly into a look of serious gratitude. "It is real. It is mine." He looked over at the trailer where his sons were playing. "I got the final custody decree yesterday," he said quietly. "Full legal and physical custody. Tiffany gets no visitation until her criminal trial is concluded, and even then it will be supervised." I nodded. "It is done then. It is done." He agreed. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw the little boy I used to take to baseball games. But behind that I saw the man who had walked through hell and come out carrying his children. "Thank you, Dad," he said. "Not for the money, not for the job, but for waking me up, for making me fight." I reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. It felt solid, strong. "You did the fighting, Daniel. I just gave you the ammunition." I looked him in the eye. "But remember the lesson, son. It is the most expensive lesson you will ever learn. So don't waste it." "What is that?" he asked. "Never let anyone else define your worth," I said. "Not a wife, not a partner, not even your father. You define who you are by what you build, by who you protect, and by what you refuse to tolerate. You are a Caldwell, and Caldwells do not break." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I won't forget." "Go be with your boys," I said. "I'm heading out." "You are leaving early?" he asked, surprised. "I have a date," I said, checking my watch. "Mrs. Ellison invited me to the opera. She says, I need to experience a little culture after all this war." Daniel laughed. "It was a good sound. Go have fun. We got this." I walked away from the noise and the dust, heading toward my truck. I climbed in and started the engine. As I pulled out of the construction site, I looked back one last time. I saw my son standing amidst the steel and concrete, the master of his domain. I saw my grandsons waving from the window of the trailer. I saw a legacy that was safe. I drove onto Lakeshore Drive. The sun was beginning to set behind the skyscrapers, casting long shadows over the city I helped build. The water of Lake Michigan turned a deep, bruised purple. It was a beautiful city, a tough city. The last 6 months had cost me a fortune in legal fees, bought debt, and sleepless nights. It had cost me the illusion of a happy extended family. It had forced me to be ruthless in ways I thought I had left behind. But as I merged into traffic, feeling the power of the engine beneath me and the peace in my heart, I knew the truth. It was worth every penny. I turned on the radio, found a jazz station, and